Let's go straight to Washington, speak to our North American correspondent, Rowan Bridge. Rowan, can I pick up with you, first of all, on these US reports that the suspect is dead?
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm that they are. I'm just going to read to you from a statement which literally dropped in the last 15 seconds, where the FBI have said that they engaged with local law enforcement, engaged with this person, and they are now deceased. So, yes, we can confirm that the driver was killed at the scene by police. There were reports of a gunfire between the two sides, and we are now getting confirmation that the driver in this vehicle is now dead.
What we gleaned from that press conference was that it was intentional. I mean, this was not a driving under influence situation. This was a man who was weaving down the road, trying to kill as many people as he could, and then he fired on officers from his vehicle. Explain to me the legal point around terrorism, because we had a situation with the United Healthcare gunman where he was charged on murder charges, but then subsequently charged with terrorism-related charges, Rowan. How does this work in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I think just worth clarifying, there was some confusion at the news conference this morning about whether this is being treated as a terrorist incident or not. I'll quote to you again the final line from the FBI statement, which has just been released. It says, "We are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism." So it would appear that the FBI are now treating this as a terrorist incident. That investigation is obviously ongoing. We are expecting more details in a news conference within the next sort of 2 hours, where I suspect we may get more details around exactly what happened and how that investigation is progressing.
It's inevitable, Rowan, that people's minds will turn back to events in Germany and the attack on a Christmas market, because it's unusual in the United States for a vehicle to be used in this way, largely because weapons are so readily available.
Yes, I mean, what was clear was that this person had decided that this was going to be the strategy that they used. I mean, in the news conference, we heard how they deliberately drove around bollards that were put in place to try and stop anyone doing something like this. And clearly they targeted an area of the city they knew would be busy. You know, Bourbon Street is the heart of the sort of tourist area of New Orleans. This was New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, a time when there would have been crowds out on the street. Also, there is a major American football game due to take place in the city today that also would have brought extra crowds to the city. So this person knew that this was an area that there was going to be a lot of people, and they knew that they would be able to use this pickup truck as a weapon if they really, really tried to.
Yeah, just confirmation here on the wires from the FBI, as you report, Rowan, that they are now investigating this as an act of terrorism, contrary to what we were told at the press conference. We're looking at the scenes here of the initial investigation, Rowan. This was such a big event, New Year's Eve, big football event today in New Orleans as well, 300 officers out last night. As part of this initial investigation, they will be focusing on the vehicle. I'm told that the drones were up last night, so they'll have a lot of information on how it came into the city and what its movements were.
Yes, and I suspect also CCTV footage of the area. If you look at, for example, the United Healthcare shooting in New York City, police were very quickly able to establish the movements of their key suspect in the case because the city was carpeted with CCTV. And again, New Orleans is a large metropolitan area. I suspect it has quite a lot of CCTV. Many of those businesses in that area, it's a tourist area, will also, I suspect, have had CCTV. So I suspect they will be doing a trawl of that for footage. And also things like, for example, did the driver have a mobile phone on him? They will also be able to triangulate from that some of their movements as well. And so they will also be doing forensics on the vehicle and on the scene itself to establish exactly the sequence of events, and also examining, as I say, video footage, which will probably show that vehicle arriving in that area and possibly where it may have been previous to that as well.
That's a really good live shot we're just looking at, Rowan, which gives people who don't know New Orleans a pretty good view of Bourbon Street, of the architecture around it. So you have these elevated balconies, people would be looking down on the street, which is why we've had this pretty awful footage from the scene on social media in the last few hours. Knowing New Orleans as I do and how busy that street becomes, and especially so on a New Year's Eve, I'm bound to ask why there aren't more substantial bollards on that street, as there are in many European cities, Rowan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what precautions they put in place in the area, or indeed if they had any intelligence in advance of anything that might affect the area. Clearly, you know, it's a large metropolitan area. There are large crowds who are going to be out on New Year's Eve. There is always a security risk around that and a safety risk, even if it's just around people and alcohol. But in terms of what measures are in place and why they were, I think that's going to be a question that will be asked of the mayor and of the authorities in the days going forward.
Some of the pictures we've seen around the yellow tape on the perimeter of the investigation, you see people still wandering around pretty much in a daze, Rowan, because they were out late till last night, of course, as you would expect on a New Year's Eve. But a lot of these people would have been staying in this area, not able to go back.
Yeah, I mean, it's New Orleans is a party city, or it can be a party city, and it would have attracted tourists into the area for New Year's Eve celebrations and for what's known as the Sugar Bowl. It's an American football game that takes place between two university teams, which takes place in the city today, which by the sounds of it will still be going ahead. But that means that there's an awful lot of people that the number of people in the city swelled dramatically, and people will have been staying in hotels and in the area. And as you say, they've sealed off quite a large area around the scene, as you would expect. And that means that some people just don't have anywhere to go at the moment. But also, I suspect a lot of people are just sort of shocked and dazed by what has happened. You know, this was New Year's Eve, a time of celebration that's turned into a horrific tragedy for the city.
A lot of families will obviously be desperately trying to find information at the moment, and so inevitably attention will focus on at least 35 people who were injured, Rowan, who are spread, as we know from the press conference, across a multitude of hospitals in the area. Do we know anything about the state of those injuries?
No, I mean, the only details they have confirmed, as you say, is at least 35 people injured, taken to several hospitals. What we don't know is the severity of those injuries, or anything about the sexes or ages of the people involved. The police say that their initial investigations suggest that they were more local people than tourists who were affected by it, but we don't know exactly how severe those injuries are. And as you say, we also know that 10 people sadly were killed at the scene in this incident as well.
Yeah, for viewers who are just joining us, I should just quickly recap on the lines that have been coming to us in the last half an hour or so. So the first one, that the suspect in the New Orleans truck crash is dead. We've had that confirmed now by the authorities and also by a city councilman in the last few minutes. He did engage officers on the scene when his truck crashed, and it would appear that he was killed at the scene. And the FBI also confirming in the last few minutes, contrary to what actually they told us at the press conference in the last hour, that they are in fact investigating this as an act of terrorism.